you can always call me. And me! And me! And me! Not me! I got canceled!
Welcome back, nerds. Fino here with a guide for Utsumi Erice. She's a limited 4-star Avenger introduced in Arctic Summer World, and I must say that she's got a lot of ground to make up. Her original Lancer variant was about as interesting as watching people pretend Mozart wasn't a bad guy for like an hour in Board Game Apocalypse. Or going to the Coliseum in Board Game Apocalypse. Or farming dice in Board Game. I'm saying her event sucked. And she kinda sucked too. Let's see if Erice does any better this time. Our first stop is Evil Spirit Medium. This is a 3-turn arts buff with a 2-hit evade. For double-sided skills like this, having the defensive component be hit-based is the correct call. Lets you fire and forget, though you may wish it at a 3rd stack. That's because of Boundary on the Underworld path. This skill packs a very interesting combination of effects. First is an AoE curse that hits for 1k damage for 3 turns. There is a single turn taunt, and when Erice is hit, it retaliates with a 3-turn defense reduction effect. On top of all that, 30% battery. The taunt is obviously meant to pair with her evade, but it also synergizes with one of the stock Avenger class passives, the one literally called Avenger. This amplifies Erice's defensive NP gain. She's essentially trying to trick the enemy into looping for her. Funny stuff. The catch is that Erice isn't exactly made to tank hits, and while being able to nullify 2 out of 3 attacks is nice, that 3rd one can still do some serious damage to her. And against any boss with Sure Hit or Invuln Pierce, this arrangement can blow up in your face. Doubly so considering she's incentivized to run Black Grail, which in turn will eat away at her health pool over the course of a fight. Because it's tied to her battery, Erice can't exactly ignore Boundary on the Underworld path, so you can end up in some awkward spots. Buyer beware. The last of Erice's standard skills is Reaper. This grants her 3 turns of insta-kill chance, crit damage, and anti-servant damage. 2 of these will make more sense once we get to her noble Phantasm, but the crit damage stands out as a very strange outlier. On paper, this combos with her Oblivion Correction passive to give Erice some bite, but the catch is that in general, art setups don't normally produce a large number of stars. Yeah, you have Lady Avalon, but odds are if you're running Erice in a fight, you're doing it to blow your target away with overwhelming firepower and spamming her noble Phantasm. That means using double Castoria and probably running some sort of star dump or star generation craft essence on them, which will blow your party cost. An even bigger issue is that Avengers have atrocious star absorption stats, undershot only by Berserkers, and Erice has no skill to counterbalance this. My take is that if you're in a situation where you end up with a ton of stars through specific fight mechanics, or because you're doing a Calamity Jane setup, you can take advantage of the crit buff, but you shouldn't formulate your game plan around it. And now we come to Erice's noble Phantasm. Ame no Kagami no Fune is a single target arts attack that does increased damage against cursed enemies and has a chance to insta-kill. Its overcharge is a single turn of preemptive arts performance. Now you know why Boundary on the Underworld path came with that AoE curse. Combine this with Reaper's anti-servant buff, and Erice can strike enemies for some pretty ridiculous damage. For general usage, you could argue this is even better than attribute or alignment-based anti-buffs, because Erice can just apply the curse herself to double whammy almost any servant in the game. It is worth noting curse immunity passives do exist, though they're quite rare. Oberon and Himiko have it, though the latter would have to contend with class disadvantage. The more likely issue is your curse just straight up missing, the usual debuff problem. Some servants just have really high debuff resistance. To hedge against this situation, I'd recommend arming Erice with curse command codes. There are exactly 5 unique ones in the game, one for each of Erice's cards. There's technically a 6th, but it's one that inflicts curse on its user for Van Gogh related applications, so ignore that one. On top of the curse, TikTok Bomb ignores defense, Knight of the Abyssal Sanctuary gives 3 stars, Bestial Talisman gives 1 star, Demonic Beast of the Forest is pure curse, but it should be available through the Mana Prism shop, and Heal Princess comes later this year in the Tam Lin Cup and steals 100 HP on hit. Helps to stem the bleeding from Black Grail. By layering these in front of your noble Phantasm, you can fish for a curse proc against resistant enemies, or even new foes that enter the battle while Boundary on the Underworld path is down. That said, some challenge quests give their boss blanket debuff immunity, and these are a wash for Erice. The instant kill mechanic also has some applications. High difficulty quests sometimes feature bulky bronze enemies. For AoE arrangements, you typically want Doman or one of the 2 good Nidacris versions, but for lone enemies, Erice has a real shot. She can even kill silver enemies with Isoya High School Mystic Code. That's the Tsukihime one. This was relevant for the Takasugi event's 90++ quest, where you have to deal with a massive silver Heracles Nobu on Wave 1. The upside of Erice over someone like Doman is twofold. First of all, if you whiff the insta-kill and you're forced to improvise, Erice has a much better chance of actually taking out the target in question. Secondly, she can maintain the main attacker role in your setup, building resources back to fight the Wave 3 boss. That said, Ame no Kagami no Fune is stuck with a hit count of 4, meaning you're not exactly going to be looping this thing. Not without your arts cards. Her self-restoration passive will help a little bit with some charge per turn, but you'll want to use every advantage you've got on that front. setting up your taunt, getting the starting charge of pen skill, running a third charger, the usual. That said, Erice's taunt will interfere with your esports supports. If she's taunted and your Jufu is also taunted, there's a 50% chance either takes a given hit. That's good if you're trying to get mileage on Erice's evade, but it's very bad if you're trying to get Juju on that beat. On the subject of pen skills, there are two other options that may be worth consideration. The first is anti-lancer damage. If you're using Erice generically, this is free damage against a class she can feasibly fight. Not bad. The other is 2 years down the road, cooldown reduction. Erice has 6-turn cooldowns across the board. In longer boss fights, getting a second wind a turn faster can make a tremendous difference, though your supports will probably need it too. Castoria and Jufu both have major skills on a 6-turn cooldown. This only works on your first set of skill activations, but a bit of consistency can make the difference between an Erice sweep and you having to brawl it out with Mash and that underleveled Ryoma you fished out of the GSSR and stuck in your backline in hopes of some easy bond. Another neat bit of tech is that, eventually, we'll get the method to walk on the stars. It grants increased damage against cursed enemies. You'll prefer Black Rail in most situations, but if you miss the train on that, you can get a free set of the Mole CE during the Wangina World Tour event. Speaking of curses, it may be tempting to use Erice alongside Curse Amplifier servants, but I honestly don't think it's worth the trouble. A lot of those servants are attackers who have spam potential in their own right. Pushing their performance is going to give you much better results for Curse memes than splitting the difference with Erice. Another curiosity is that Erice has the Living Human trait, which is thinly supported. Both Arquade and Voyager grant a bit of charge to living humans, and I'm starting to suspect that Erice is a thing for blondes. But the trio operate in different card types, so you'll have to be careful about running them together. Arquade and Erice is actually a combo with some potential, since the former has a full 100% battery and can potentially take out an AoE wave in what would otherwise be a single target encounter. Then Erice can handle the loners while benefiting from that extra charge. Another fun fact about living humans, there's a craft essence that specifically boosts their bond gain, Chaldea Morning, which caps out at 20% additional bond. Extremely niche, but handy within that niche. Now let's compare Erice to our most obvious competitor, Astrea. They're different classes, but odds are you've used them for things beyond fighting rulers and moon cancers. The two have remarkably similar performance, but before we account for Astrea's anti-buff, Erice has an edge at all NP levels, assuming you're fighting a servant. That's really impressive because Astrea has an upgraded Noble Phantasm. Erice doesn't. That's the power of her own anti-buffs actually being generic. A 30% battery also allows for more turn 1 flexibility than Astrea's 20, though as art servants, neither are necessarily losing sleep over the difference. Against evil servants though, Astrea actually gains a slight advantage in terms of damage, and against evil non-servants, Astrea is going to blow Erice out of the water. Things like Nue, Giant Ghost, Demon Pillars. Additionally, Astrea is better equipped to use crit stars with a combination of absorption, crit damage, and multiple ways of dumping out stars. However, Astrea is saddled with way more single turn buffs, so her ability to stay relevant in a long fight is actually worse than Erice's, assuming the latter doesn't get herself killed with her taunt first. Astrea is entirely buff-based, Erice needs a debuff to land. It's a real back and forth. So I'd say that Erice has notable weaknesses, but she has enough in terms of strengths to hold her own. Erice might not be some sort of slam dunk god tier who needs cream milk juggernaut, but she's a useful, generic arts attacker. Play around her anti-curse and anti-servant effects, and you've got a real slugger on your hands. And don't forget about that insta-kill. It can come up in some unexpected places. If you pulled a bunch of her while rolling for Ibuki, you've got some real gold on your hands. Not bad for a consolation prize, right? Thanks for watching, lads. Like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more, and come on to my twitch.tv/Finotaisen where I stream every week, Wednesday and then Friday through Sunday at 3 PM Pacific time. Later this month, I'm hosting a Soul Calibur 6 tournament, and it's open to Twitch subscribers. We're running creative characters too, so if you want to see your favorite Fate servants represented as hideous oversexed lizardmen, you won't want to miss it.